Я є прихильником свободи слова. Мені може не подобатись те, що відбувається на програмі, але я віддам життя за те, щоб вона була.
Hello from Kiev. Welcome to Shuster Live in English. According to the Oxford Dictionary, the winner in the nomination of the International Award of 2016 is post-truth. The average woman or man do not distinguish anymore between fact and fiction, true and false. The referendum campaign in Great Britain and the presidential campaign in the United States were a clear example of that. Ukraine is by no means an exception. And certain of the examples we'll discuss today in our studio. Our guests are GULLIVER, CRAGG, correspondent in Ukraine and Poland of the channel France 24, Jason Smart, political scientist, Peter Dickinson, chief editor of Business Ukraine magazine, is going to join us very soon, SERGIY VLASENKO, member of parliament, and YEVHEN UTKIN, president of a high-tech company, KM Core. Example number one. Last week, thousands of people were protesting on the streets of Kiev. People had invested or deposited their money in commercial banks. Banks were closed, and people lost their deposits, and they're demanding justice now. Some of those protests were genuine, most of them were genuine. One of them was sponsored. We think so. By a small political party, it's quite new. Its leaders are former members of Party of Regions. And they were protesting just in front of a National Bank building. One of the leaders, a young politician, Yevhen Murayev, was approached by somebody and he was handed a USB drive. And on that drive, he had seen and listened to 90 hours of conversations between the deputy head of the National Bank of Ukraine, Ekaterina Roshkova, and several big players on the financial market. Channel News 1, which is close to Yevhen Murayev, did a 1.5-hour program about it. We, in our program, showed 5 minutes. The most important excerpts, we thought. Ekaterina Roshkova discussed issues with the CEO of a Russian state bank, VTB, and helping that bank. She defended the interests of her own bank, Platinum Bank, although she's not anymore officially connected to it, and she also discussed liquidity. Nobody in Ukraine picked it up. And I'm asking, is it fact? Is it fiction? Is it true? Is it false? How do we deal with issues like that? Sergey.
You see, Savik, the problem is, you see that the country is already full of such an information, and maybe the country became it doesn't want to react on that, but that's not normal. That's absolutely not normal. Yesterday, just on another TV show, I've heard let's say, the official statement of the SBU spokesman, the spokesman of the Secret Service, who said, yes, we will investigate it, whether the taping was legal or not. We will be not digging in the details which were discussed on that tapes. As for me, I was really shocked as a member of the parliament, as a citizen of this country. I was really shocked because during the war period in Ukraine, when we have the aggressor state who tried to conquer some territories and who conquered some territories of Ukraine, and at that moment, during the war period, one of the chief executives of the National Bank is helping to the Russian state-owned bank just to increase their influence on the financial market on Ukraine. So as for me, that's an absolutely, that's a crime against the state, as for me, if it is truth. As for me, on the same day when you showed these tapes on your show, or when they were showed on the News 1 channel, At the same moment, the SBU should launch the criminal case against that. They should investigate not how Mr. Muraev just received this information, but what is said on that. Is it true or not? Is it dealing with the helping to the Russian authorities to increase their influence on Ukrainian's economy? So that's the main question. But you see, all the secret services and the institutions like prosecutors general are under total control of the president of Ukraine, who is not interested in such an investigation. So that's the main problem. So the president of Ukraine is the cover on that. So he is the roof. We are using such a slang word like a roof. He is a roof for the head of the national bank. That's why there are no investigations. Nobody is interested in that, I mean, from the state authorities. And we are just only discussing that on the TV shows like yours.
Gulliver, what?
I'd like to ask you, Mr. VLASENKO, because you've been talking about this, I know, a lot. What is really the headline story about this? What exactly has she apparently done wrong according to these tapes? Because I've listened to a bit of the tapes, I've seen a bit of it, and I mean, I get lost in all the detail. And I'd like to understand how much money is involved. She's accused of helping banks smuggle money to Russia, is that right? It appears from these tapes. Can you explain how much is involved?
It's a little bit more complicated because, you see, we have, let's say we have a policy of the National Bank according to which the National Bank is liquidating the small or medium Ukrainian banks, but they are helping the Russian bank to survive, even in the situation when they should be liquidated. So she is supporting, saying in a legal way, she is directly supporting the Russian bank. She is helping them to smuggle the money.
Several?
On the tapes, no, two of them were mentioned. One is a VTB bank, and the second bank is a BM bank, so the former Bank of Moscow. So two Russian state-owned banks are artificially supported by Ukrainian National Bank during the war period.
And these Russian banks are still operating in Ukraine?
Sure.
How come?
That's the question. That's the question. So it looks like that is the state policy, to have a business with Russians as usual, let's say, because the president have his own candy factory in Lipetsk, and he's operating as usual during the war period. He's paying taxes to the budget of the Russian Federation. So let's say that's one page of the story. And the second page of the story is that the National Bank is helping the Russian banks to survive in this period of time in Ukraine. And the problem is that after liquidating of 84 Ukrainian banks, the percentage of influence of Russian banks on the Ukrainian financial sector grown from 12 up till 41%. So today, the Ukrainian financial market is on 41% operated by Russian state-owned banks, and that's during the war period. So that's not normal from the political point of view, that's not normal from the legal point of view, and so on.
Again, when we look at the recording itself, if we can listen to 5 seconds of it, it's video and audio, it's very good quality.
Вот, я думаю, на сегодняшний момент. То есть минимальная информация от НБУ минимум.
Mr. Utkin,
I'm not an expert in this. Actually, I'm not following this scandal at all. And as a businessman, I'd like to focus on results. And talking about NBU itself,
National
Bank of Ukraine, for this 3 years period of time. So this bank destroyed a couple of banks, and we paid this price as a business. I lost dozens of million hryvnias because of they destroyed one of the bank. So, and a lot of small and medium-sized businesses just paid this. Probably it was a good idea to clean up this bank. I'm not sure. But on top of this destroying system, you have to create something. You have to support local, first of all, local Ukrainian business. And I'd like to say, during these 3 years, we have no at all financial tools to support businesses who helped our army, businesses who create jobs, etc. So I'm more worried about this, not about this scandal. On top of this, we are living in the very, very hybrid time. Means, first of all, like a businessman, I had a business in Russia. And it was actually, for me, it was like 70%, 70% of my business was in Russia. I lost everything there. I lost because I am Russian, but I support Maidan, I support army, etc. And I lost this business. So I think it's very, very clear message. So I support Ukraine, I support Ukrainians, revolution, army, etc. And now, when I'm receiving this message, so I'm not, I'm not very satisfied with this. And I'm not expert in this, but, definitely we have to have explanation from the top leaders of our country.
The lack of leadership on this has been pretty incredible from the top. When there's country already faces such serious doubts about the national banking system, there's such a lack of trust as whether the national bank will support itself. Banks don't have the necessary liquidity that they need. You would imagine they'd immediately act to try to clear this up, to make sure that this scandal was completely investigated and people were prosecuted if there's something illegal that took place. But in fact, they've taken the other course of action, which is to try to hide it, which is, I guess, much more typical for here. And it's unfortunate. It's terrifying. And if I was a Ukrainian depositor and I had an account here, I'd be terrified by this. Because if we already see this sort of collaboration, what does that mean? And secondly, the collaboration with Russia, of all countries in the world, the country they have war on. And so this is just fantastically a terrible situation for Ukraine.
Has this guy Murayev, who got the tapes, taken them to the SBU yet?
Yes, he has.
He has?
Yes, he has. And today, finally, we got a response from the Ukrainian security service saying, via Facebook, not as usual, that we are going to investigate, not facts which may be true or false, but we are going to investigate the origin of it.
As I've told you, they are trying, you see, they are trying to change the vector of the discussion. So they are not discussing the sense, they're trying to discuss how it appeared, when did they come from, these tapes, and so on and so on. But by the way, today, Yulia Tymoshenko, she presented her file to the SBU personally, saying that should be investigated, and also mentioning these tapes. Because you see, you are absolutely right that in the normal country, at the moment of the appearance of such an information, first of all, the head of the National Bank should explain something. The vice deputy head of the National Bank should explain something. By the way, the president should explain something because he nominated the head of the National Bank and he trusts her. And he is protecting her, and so on and so on. But they are trying, as Savik mentioned at the beginning of the program, that they are not even sharing this information through the channel. They're trying to block the information. So only the really independent TV studios and only the independent agencies are talking about that.
But do these tapes show that they have done something illegal, or simply that they're pursuing a policy which you think is wrong?
Sure. They are also talking about the, let's say, the black salaries. So they are also the part of the conversation saying that some money should be paid under the table. They are also talking about that. So there are a lot of information which could be used for launching in criminal cases. They are also talking with the one bank, saying that bank is money laundering, directly using that word. So they are money laundering. And the vice deputy head of the National Bank is saying directly to the CEO of the bank, please, I'm asking you, please stop the money laundering. So what's that? What's that? And no reaction from the top officials, no reaction from the prosecutor general, no reaction from the media, no reaction from the National Bank.
And it's not because she wants it stopped, because she wants it not to be visible. Because
absolutely.
It's become too visible.
And this is, what concerns me for the future of Ukraine, especially with the United States specifically, where there's Ukraine fatigue in Washington. Everyone's talking about it now. Why should we continue to support Ukraine? It's a country that's disappointed us again and again. And now we have this, and they see, look, they want another tranche. There's more money that's demanded. But what will happen to this money? What is the state of the banking system? And we see that when there are serious, very serious concerns, the government does not investigate as they should, at least not quickly. And perhaps they will change. But at this point, I would be very concerned about what this will do to international relations for Ukraine.
But you see, I'm also the member of the Ukrainian Parliament, and I'm also the member of the Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe. And just as a member of the Parliamentary Assembly, I have just the meetings with the international businessmen and international politicians. And I have no answer to the simple question, why we should support the sanctions against Russia if you are just trading and making business as usual. You, Ukraine, have no sanctions against Russia. You are supporting the Russian banks. You are supporting the Russian economy. You are paying taxes to the Russian budget. Why we should continue with the sanctions? And I have no answer to that.
Well, that's a separate issue, though. Surely that's the support for the Russian budget and the trade with Russia is one thing. This is criminality we're talking about here.
There are two things about that. One thing is a criminal thing, and the second thing is the policy which is done by the National Bank, artificially supporting the Russian banks on the financial market of Ukraine. So as for me, that's absolutely the same what I'm talking about. Yeah. So I couldn't explain to my fellow colleagues in the Parliamentary Assembly why they should insist in their countries like Italy, Germany and France on the continuation of the sanctions when Ukraine is not just using the sanctions against the Russian Federation.
Before these tapes came out, was this something that people were discussing, the way that these Russian banks were performing in Ukraine? Were there any suspicions about it before these tapes were out?
Yes, very much.
Oh, really?
Yes, that's just another evidence of that. That's not the only evidence. That's just another evidence of that.
But generally, the perception in the West, from what I hear, I mean, I'm not an expert at all on the banking sphere, seems to be that the reform of the banking sphere is one of the areas in which Ukraine's Western partners think that the country is doing better.
That's
and Fitch
also true, yeah.
just raised Ukraine's credit rating a few days ago, right? And they've received quite a lot of plaudits. Are those plaudits all misplaced?
Yeah, so, but if I may, one more time. So it's one question to clean up banking system. So definitely we have to clean up this, definitely. But who is paying for this? Paying just normal people, who is now on the protest in the near National Bank of Ukraine, some of them. Who is paying?
Not only them.
Yeah. Who is else? Small and medium-sized businesses. Because all of the banks, I'd like to divide these banks, and one type of banks, they support international big players who invested in Ukraine. Another one from big financial groups who supported their business, and for normal business, for real economy. So we have no financial tools for this. Actually, IMF, $17.5 billion. So it's the program, new program for IMF, just to support our banking system. But money doesn't reach real economy. So that's the main message from my side, from real economy. So it's, we have no tools to create new jobs, etc. So this scandal, it's very bad story. But in general, during these 3 years, so we have no strategy, we have no support real economy. So that's, for me, it's a big issue with this $17.50 billion which is coming to the country. And frankly speaking, I think that one of the tools to fix this issue is public and private partnership. So, and money has to go directly to real economy, not through this not very efficient banking system. So it's my opinion.
A lot of the IMF money was specifically to prop up the banking system, though, originally, wasn't it? And the currency as well. I mean, in 2014, it was, the cupboard was bare. There was no money. There was
but that's great. But besides that, National Bank of Ukraine and banking system has to support real economy, has to have another strategy for real economy. So it's not, we have to see all of the picture, not only talking about this hryvnia, dollars, etc.
And I agree with Evgeny that the question of the strategy is a key question. It's the second key question, because when we are talking, for example, for the liquidation of the banks, there is no strategy on that. That is done absolutely voluntarily. So, for example, we have some banks who should be liquidated, no problem with that. But we also have the banks which were working normally, which had a long history of work, and there were no problems with that bank. Like, for example, like Bank Krishchatik, it was working for for more than 20 years, and there were no problems with that bank. It was liquidated absolutely voluntarily. And we have a lot of decisions of the court right now saying that this decision of the National Bank to liquidate some banks were absolutely illegal. So they are using the, you see, they are using the National Bank of Ukraine just to achieve some specific interests. Sometimes that is a political struggle when they are ruining the banks, dealing with some political parties which are opposite to the position of the president. Sometimes that is a business, that is an element of the business war between two different economical groups. So that's also the question. And I agree totally that they have that the National Bank of Ukraine has no strategy how to use the banking system to develop the national economy. Because we see no progress in that issue, absolutely. So they are doing nothing in that direction at all. So I see no one step in something which will help the Ukrainian economy to grow up a little bit even.
Well, I would refer to Gulliver's comment as well. I often also hear from international representatives, diplomats, etc., and also from bankers themselves that fundamentally they're quite happy with the reforms going on at the MBU. Of course, that doesn't refer to this scandal or these sort of allegations, but in general, in terms of the stabilisation, they're more or less, it's on the success side.
Do you know where the biggest stability is? On the cemetery. On the cemetery. Okay. And now we have the cemetery of Ukrainian economy.
We'll break for a couple of minutes. National Bank of Ukraine, on the one hand, we say it doesn't have a strategy. On the other hand, we say it allows Russian state banks very successfully operate on the Ukrainian market. 41% is their share. So basically, is there a strategy? Isn't there a strategy? What is it? The president himself, he has a history of controlling the National Bank of Ukraine.
Yes, the president was for a long time the head of the council of the National Bank. Yes, he knows very well. He's let's say he's one of the best bankers right now in the country, because that's the only, or there are a few banks having profit during these hard years, and the bank of the president increases. He doubled his profit during the last year. That's a very good example of how the president can use his authority to increase his assets. So you are absolutely right. He knows the role of the National Bank. He knows how the National Bank could be used like influencing the economical situation, influencing the political situation, and he is doing that very well. By the way, we are talking about one part of the business dealing with the National Bank, but we also have the problem with the liquidated banks. As you know, they have the assets. And the price of that assets are now absolutely diminishing in 3 or 4 times and selling to the companies, let's say, not of the nearest environment of the president, but of the some environment of the president. That's the second part of the deal, and we should talk about that also. So yes, on the one hand, we have no strategy in helping the Ukrainian economy to start growing, but we have a very good strategy how to help the Russian banks to survive and how to obtain new assets in this water, let's say, in this situation.
It does worry me as Ukraine now faces trying to get more sanctions against Russia, or continuing them, as you earlier mentioned, that now we've had a situation where it's very clear there's collaboration between the National Bank and with a Russian bank. And it's going to be very difficult to explain to the international community. There's not really a plan on how we're going to pay things back or how we're going to work with the European Union, but there's a very clear plan on how we can help Russian banks. And I think it's a very bad signal, a very bad signal. It's going to be very hard to convince people who are of goodwill, but they just don't see many results here in fighting corruption. But they do see a result in trying to help Russian banks. I think this is going to figure very badly.
You are a diplomat. Do you see any results in fighting corruption? You said a few results. There are no results at all. That's the problem of Ukraine right now, that we have no results in fighting corruption. We have no, being honest, I'm trying not to be a diplomat on that. We have no results in fighting corruption. We have no reforms in fighting corruption. And that's the biggest problem. That's the problem number 1 right now in Ukraine. And we start fighting with that, start from the top, not from the bottom and not from the just somewhere near the land. We should start fighting corruption from the top.
May I correct you? Because I'm not completely agree with you talking about corruption. So
we are a democratic country.
Yeah, we have a result, but we have result comes not from the top, but from the ground, from the society. And because it's, I know a lot of examples when people agreed not to pay bribes to customs, to policemen, etc. But it's coming from the not from the ground, not from the leaders.
I agree with you, but you are talking about let it named the everyday corruption. So yes, maybe, but I'm talking.
Just explain to your audience.
But I'm talking about the multi-billion-dollar corruption. So the biggest corruption.
There are some results which I think you could argue come more from pressure from external powers rather than from goodwill on the part of the Ukrainian government as itself. But isn't the increasing of gas tariffs and the closing of the possibility for people to sell gas at household prices to companies and pocket the difference, which a lot of people, a lot of officials all over Ukraine were making money off, that's now become impossible, right? Is that not one thing that we could say has eliminated a corruption scheme?
No, they created an absolutely new corruption scheme dealing with the tariffs. That's an absolutely corruptive scheme. When they increase the tariffs in dozens of times, and no one knows where the profit goes. Sorry, no one knows where the profit goes.
Has any evidence come out so far that that profit is going to people's pockets?
We are investigating that. But you see, the government right now is trying to hide everything. They are not going to open the sources. They are not going to open the information about that. Yes, from the logical point of view, I understand that all these profits on the tariffs, on the gas tariffs, are received by the oligarchs who are controlling the gas market. So they receive their money just directly from the Ukrainian budget, a huge amount of billions of hryvnias. They just receive directly that amount of money. And that's it. That's a new schema. They don't need to sell the gas to the industrial plants. They are selling the gas to the population, and they receive the difference in the tariffs directly to their accounts. And that's it. And they increase the price for the population. They make it equal to the price, to the foreign price, let's say. But from the point of view of the production of gas, so the price for Ukrainian, the price for production of Ukrainian gas is, as in any country, something near $20 US. And they are selling that gas to the population on the price of 300 and something US. And they have the difference of 360 US, which goes to the oligarchs, and that's it.
Again, but you say strategy. Countries in difficulty, really. It lost a piece of territory. It lost a lot of foreign currency coming in, and basically, it cannot be a quick recovery. So where would you see a strategy? Because yes, I understand that business cannot borrow. It's impossible to borrow from the banks today because it's very high. The percentage is very, very high. It's about what, 30, 20?
26.
26.
26 up to 30.
So,
yeah. So first of all, talking about strategy, our country has to be focused. And as for me, it's very, very simple. So in defense security, it has to be one of our main focus. And the second one is agriculture. And the third one is energy. So, and for this, we have enough resources. We do not need IMF money for this. Because in the last program, you invited me like an expert in high tech, and the discussion was e-declaration. So probably I was because I know something about E. And I was in your program, so the money which
I will help you in declarations.
Yeah.
I will talking about E. I will talk about declarations.
So they, declared during this, months. They declared a lot of assets. So and this assets, we have to be focused. We can invest. We can invest in, for instance, agriculture. Ukraine in top 3 countries in the world in terms of agriculture. And if you combine these 2 main assets, land and human capital, so it's new industry, AgTech, they call it AgTech, technology for agriculture. And Ukraine could be a champion on this, worldwide champion, not just only here in this region, but worldwide champion, because we have a great developers, programmers, etc. So, and talking about strategy about National Bank of Ukraine, so they have to be focused on creating, to support something, to support this industry. Not only, you know, because as I know, during 25 years, so we always supported banking system. And then bank evaporated without founders of the banks, without billions of dollars which evaporated with banks during these 25 years. And started with Banco Ukraina, so a lot of Delta, a lot of banks just evaporated with managers, founders, and with our money. So my company, just only my company, paid a couple of millions of dollars for this, just evaporated with bankers. And nobody in prison. Nobody, these bankers in prison. So it's about, so destroy something. But create something means we have to be focused, create special program from innovation company for small and medium businesses, because money which coming from EU to our state institutions, so with quite reasonable rate, then it's no way for us to receive this money. So no way at all for normal businesses. So that's about strategy. Strategy is about Ukraine, not about just some artificial piece of paper with some portrait inside. So it's about real economy. So, and in this field, we have no strategy.
You know, ultimately, I think this is a national security issue for Ukraine as well. With the potential, I mean, with the great degree of potential there is here for inflation, that could be very high. Or if there's something like a collapse of the banking system or further collapse of it, it could do so much to destroy the country's future.
National currency.
The national currency. This is a serious issue. And the fact that this isn't being looked into more, I think, is worrisome. If I was Russia, what would I think? It's very hard to invest in something like a war. War is very expensive. But to have your banks have such a major role within the economy and the ability to manipulate that, which manipulates the entire country, could actually destroy the economy. That's much more of an effective weapon. Much more effective weapon. And I would really be curious to see what the country's plan is to work itself out of the situation that it's currently in.
You're absolutely right. And as I mentioned, one of the main problems is that, in fact, the National Bank is helping the Russian Federation to influence on the country through the influence on the financial market. And that's absolutely, you are absolutely right. That's the question of the national security. And that should be solved. That's why I'm so shocked when I didn't hear any word from the president about the situation, from the head of the National Bank. She's only saying that that's all of the rumors, and I will not react on that. So she's the head of the National Bank. And as we mentioned, Yevgeny talked about some strategies and some investments. How can anyone invest in Ukraine when the head of the National Bank, she is storing her assets in the US dollars in cash? That is absolutely, that's the strong signal to everyone. You shouldn't invest into the economy. You shouldn't put your money to the banks. You should store it in cash in your flats, and that's...
She was one of the only ones who kept most of her money in bank accounts and not in cash.
Because you know something we don't.
Most of the people who made declarations, who declared large amounts of money, declared it, the majority of their money in cash. She had the majority of her money in bank accounts.
But not the most extreme offender, definitely, yeah.
No, but she did not have it in national currency.
Yes.
Okay, but I think...
She had it in different currencies, yes.
In US dollars.
This is a developing market thing. I mean, it grabs attention, but I think you'd find a similar pattern in a lot of developing countries.
With minor currencies,
But that's an absolutely strong signal to everyone. Why you should ask the common person or the small businessman that he should invest all his efforts in Ukrainian national currency, in Ukrainian national economy, when the head of the national bank is sending such a strong signal that the Ukrainian currency is not stable, but she's responsible for that. She is the main issue, the main goal of the national bank, according to Ukrainian constitution, is the stability of the national currency. She is responsible for that. Yeah. And she is making the steps like...
It doesn't look good. It certainly doesn't look good. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's I agree. That's not illegal, but that's a strong signal.
Let's prioritise. I think this point about the Russian influence is a far bigger issue.
Absolutely.
A far bigger issue in terms of you control the currency, you control the economy, you control the country. It is a high... If we talk about hybrid war, it's about a bigger weapon as you could have, and that does require some very cold and serious investigation now. I'll be interested to see whether the president or the National Bank comes out in the coming days, and if they don't say anything, again, the communications issue you mentioned.
Believe me,
Peter, I'll give you an example. I mean, it's a bad example. Pavel Sheremet.
Yes, another example. Yeah, this is another alarm.
FBI was here, according to the president. The German intelligence participates in investigations, and we still don't know a fact, a word, nothing.
Oh, Maidan,
so imagine
the killings. We could go to that as well.
So I don't think I don't think that.
I would go far. I would go back even as far. You know, if we want to go all the way back, I would talk about the Yushchenko poisoning as well as a classic example where there was a total failure to achieve justice.
But the reason for that
damaged credibility enormously.
But the reason for that is the absence of the professionalism. That's the absence of the professionalism and the absence of the political will to do that.
Well,
to issues. And by the way, talking about the head of the national bank, I couldn't say maybe, I don't know, I'm not a professional in that. I'm not an expert in the banking. But as for me, that's a little bit different to be an investment banker and to be the head of the National Bank of Ukraine. That's a little bit different. And you see, you could be a brilliant investment banker, but that doesn't mean that you could be professionally the head of the National Bank. And she has all the team like the representatives of the investment banking sphere. But some of them, yes, some of them are bankers, let's say clear bankers. But normally, you should appoint a professional over there who could develop a strategy, who could think about the country, and who could deal with that.
But it was not just symbolic. I mean, what Yevhen said. In 25 years, you had a number of banks were born, then disappeared, people lost money, no one is in prison. Those people who, with all the money and assets, they just left. And no one investigated.
Ukraine's not alone in not putting bankers in jail. I think that's a fairly common trend throughout the Western world as well, isn't it? I think Iceland is the only country that goes in for that.
By the way, in the Iceland there was a political responsibility for that by the Prime Minister who resigned.
Yeah.
Resigned.
The bankers went to prison and the economy boomed.
Yes, but he resigned.
Yeah.
There was a political responsibility for that. Yes, someone should have a responsibility.
But it's an exception. That's why we're all familiar, because it's so unusual. Bankers, as a rule, do not get sent to prison.
What do you think? We don't have that much time left. It's more for Ukrainians than for Europeans or Americans. The question, is Ukraine going to get visa-free travel in Europe, or is it impossible in the near future? To be very honest.
My instinct would be yes. I think it will happen.
Could I ask you when? But not be a Ukrainian president saying that tomorrow.
It's done. Yeah, every 2 weeks is the breakthrough. No, I think it'll come, but I think it will have a lot of strings attached, so to speak. A lot of get-out clauses and a lot of additional. It won't just be simply visa-free. You're welcome. But I think that the European Union has to do something, and this will be the something that they will do. But it will take time. I mean, they gave it to Moldova, for example, and it hasn't, the sky didn't fall in, Moldovans didn't all leave Moldova, where the situation is not enormously better than Ukraine. So I think there is a precedent as well. So my instinct would be yes.
I think not. I don't think it's going to be in the near future. I mean, if I look at it, it's another point of leverage for the Europeans, which they don't have otherwise. It's one of the few things they can hold over Ukraine still that they can use to try to get something in return, such as real corruption reform or something like that. And I think everything else that's going on that we don't see publicly is probably going on. I mean, why it's taking so long, why it's dragging out, I think it's part of leverage for Europe.
No, they've played their cards in terms of using it as leverage. They stated very clearly today that Ukraine has met all the criteria. If they want to not give Ukraine visa-free travel, they've got to come up with some other kind of excuse, and it's getting increasingly difficult for them to come up with more excuses. So I think that those in the European Union who want to give Ukraine visa-free travel are sort of winning, and I think it probably will happen.
I think just to follow up on that, I think it's interesting as well to see, you very rarely see Ukrainian politicians and commentators so aggressive about the issue with Europe. They're usually much more polite and diplomatic, but now we're seeing people increasingly saying, come on, give it to us. We've done our part. We've done what we said we would do. Now it's up to you, and we're not happy about it.
Yevhen, how important for Ukraine is visa-free travel to Europe?
First of all, I think nowadays it's more little bit like symbolic issue, because 3 years ago, people was in Maidan. It was about the question to join the EU, and frankly speaking, we have this corruption, we have a lot of bad stuff, but EU needs Ukraine. Because first of all, we are talking about competition between US, EU, China, Russia is trying to do something, worldwide competition. And EU needs this new energy, human capital. So definitely EU has to support this. Not support concrete president or concrete prime minister, etc., but our people. It's very bad story. 3 years we are talking about this visa issue. We have to have motivation. Now that I'm talking about normal people, normal guys. And I think it's some European leaders, they do not understand this. Do not understand because they do not support concrete person. So it's one story, but they do not support people who was in Maidan, who gave this life for European values. So, and I think it's more symbolic issue, because nowadays it's not very difficult to have a visa. It's not a big issue for businessmen. It's no issue at all. But it's more symbolic question. And of course, for our government, for our president, so it's a demonstration of inefficient, service. Because we are talking many months, years about this and no result. So that's my feedback.
I think that Ukraine could do more on the symbolic front in order to promote the same sort of Euro enthusiasm that we saw in Ukraine in 2013 and the beginning of 2014. The other day, it was the anniversary of the start of Maidan. I saw one European flag on Maidan. There was a demonstration organized mostly by pretty extreme right-wing groups, a lot of private sector flags, a lot of own flags. And those are the pictures that are shown on the TV, because those are the pictures the news agencies get. They want to do a little thing about the anniversary of Maidan. They see those pictures there and not European flags. I think if Ukraine has given itself a Ministry of Information and that kind of thing and wants to care about its image in Europe, you could organize some kind of cultural event, a concert, some kind of thing to mark the anniversary of the start of Maidan that people would come to who would be pro-European Ukrainians and not, right-wing Ukrainians in private sector and people like that.
People are really disappointed right now because of the economical situation in the country. And people are much more thinking about their everyday needs, like how to find a job, how to find some salary, and they are not thinking about some ideological things like a European vector of development. And talking about the free travels to Europe, yes, people want that. People are thinking about that. But you see, many of them are not able to travel to Europe because they have no normal income to cover all the expenses for their travels. And that's the biggest question. As far as I saw the numbers of the research, they are saying that a lot of people are disappointed because even if there would be a free travel regime to the European Union, the people will have no possibility to use that because of the economical situation. And that's the key question.
Symbolically, it would be important, I think, though. It would send a very strong message, and it would be...
And we want that. We want that. We will struggle for that, for sure, for sure.
Not only is it a welcome from Europe, but it's also an end to what is, for a long time, been a very contentious thing for Ukrainians. The sort of slightly degrading process of having to go to embassies and justify yourself and explain that your intentions aren't criminal or that you can be trusted. And I think that's always been a kind of visa apartheid that has been very damaging for Ukrainians in terms of their self-image in a European context. So it would be a huge step symbolically.
But I agree with Yevhen. I think no matter what we talk about the future, what we say about the future of European Union needs Ukraine. Even more, I'll say a thing which, you know, which we can say in Kiev, actually. You know, that the European Union needs Ukraine more than Ukraine needs European Union.
It's a strong
because
argument.
of the potential, because of the geographical position, because of very many factors, because of the richness of the land, because of everything.
They're probably the most, in some respects, probably the most European electorate in Europe at the moment is in Ukraine. And if you look at the figures for, say, far-right sort of anti-European sentiment, it's probably higher in almost every single EU member state than it is here. And the figures for far-right support, say, nationalist support in Ukraine are around, collectively, you know, somewhere around the 5% mark. In France, it's, what, 25, 30%, you know, and the Germans, the Austrians, the Dutch, everywhere else you look, it's a lot higher.
And I think that we should be brave enough to talk about that openly. Yeah. We should talk about that. We should say that openly, that yes, as Ukraine, we need Europe, but Europe needs us.
And I'd like to add, I'm not sure how many Europeans, they are ready to die for European values. And our guys in the eastern part of our country, they're dying every day for European values. Yeah. So, and that's why definitely EU needs Ukraine.
And talking about the war, and when I have the meetings with my friends in the Parliamentary Assembly, I'm always saying that that's not a war between Russia and Ukraine on the western borders. That's a war between the Russia and the Europe as a whole on the territory of Ukraine. And also the Europe should understand that. You are not helping us, you are helping yourselves.
Well, that's something that Ukraine needs to make more clear to the Europeans, because when you look at it, it's not really portrayed that way in the European press, and it should be. I agree with you completely. It's definitely the right messaging for it.
Yeah. It doesn't come across though, does it? Yeah, you're right. It's not something that European. I mean, there was an attempt when the conflict began, and there was, you know, everyone was exploring different ways of communicating. And there was one thing that I think one very popular in Ukraine, but not internationally, a meme that went round on Facebook of showing like today Ukraine, tomorrow, and they had Russian tanks in front of the Eiffel Tower and the Trafalgar Square or the Colosseum in Rome. And it just doesn't seem real. People don't expect the Russians are going to go there. They're not going to do that, so they don't agree with this.
Ask Polish people and ask Baltic people.
The Balts and the Poles are different, yeah. And this is, and it's not necessarily a matter of them taking the little green men in sort of Paris.
But on the other hand, they may be also afraid of that piece of border, enormous piece of border, which is under Russian control. You see, and you can get an enormous flow of I don't know what, agents, I don't know. Imagine saboteurs.
You mean in terms of allowing them to come via Ukraine into? Yeah, well, I think that visa-free doesn't mean just like opening the gate and saying in you go. And there's going to be a lot of restrictions. There's going to be controls. It just means you don't have to go through the process of going to embassies and applying in this sense. They'll still be able to control the flow. It's not a free-for-all. And
plus, Ukraine controls the border between the separatist-held part of Ukraine and the Ukraine-controlled, and that border is pretty well policed, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, this will be. I mean, this will probably be a factor that will strengthen.
What we hear about the bribery going on the check posts. Well,
that's true. Talking about the message Ukraine needs to send to Europe, though, didn't Poroshenko on Monday say in his speech that this was 3 years ago? That Ukrainians rose up to finally stop Russian domination or to refuse Russian domination. I can't remember his exact words, but his rhetoric was very much all about, this was about stopping Russia and anti-Russian, rather than pro-European or for Europe as a whole. And it seemed to me that he used very much not the right rhetoric there.
Yes, maybe if I didn't just focus on that quotation, if there was. But you are absolutely right. That's an absolutely wrong message, because the people were not dying against. People were dying for.
For European values, as you put it just now.
Absolutely.
Well, that's definitely something that Ukraine needs to put more of an accent on in everything that it's doing, especially with its interactions. I mean, domestically, so it becomes visible to the outside world when it's broadcast on TV, but also in its international relations, because it's simply not something you see enough of.
But lots of people in Ukraine are not necessarily very pro-European. You hear a lot of people who say, I'm against Russia and I'm against Europe. That kind of line, I don't know what the percentages are, but there certainly is that kind of line that's used.
It depends what you mean by Europe, doesn't it? I think also, and if we talk about the EU as an institution, I think that's one thing. We talk about Europe in terms of European values. I think that's something that's probably got a broader base of support. But that would be true amongst a lot of people in the EU as well, where they would probably say, you know, it's a classic commentary from the anti-EU groups in Britain as well, where they say, you know, we love Europe, we just don't like the EU. You know, we love European diversity, we love European nations. So I don't think Ukraine, I think the visa-free travel, integration into the EU structures are all beneficial in a broad sense, but fundamentally, creating a European Ukraine is something that Ukrainians can do on their own. They don't need Brussels for that. They can do that in a sense of identifying and supporting these core European values in Ukraine.
But that's exactly where we started.
Yeah.
But recordings like that, they may be true, they may be false. You have to investigate them immediately. You have to be clear in front of your people. You have to, you can't hide things like that. That's very non-European.
Yes. Transparency, openness, this would be one of the core values, yeah, and it's a communications issue, I think, and you know, the urge to hide or suppress dangerous negative information is a big problem here. It needs to be addressed.
And another issue is that basically the country is not getting better. People are living wars. Protests are going to continue. They're going to grow. And what is happening today, that people who came to power, thanks to the protests, thanks to a revolution, are trying to hide. You understand? They're trying to deviate. We have protesters on the streets. They have lost their money, and the banks have disappeared, and most of them are very honest. So our TV stations in Ukraine, especially ones controlled by the government or through oligarchs or directly by oligarchs, show you an absolutely different picture. You know, it's homeless people who have nothing to do during the day. They walk streets, around the streets, get a couple of hryvnias, and they were protesters, and which is not true. And it is going to explode sooner or later, because you can't keep, you can't keep it closed as you want to. The kettle is going to boil.
Where's it going to go? Where's this anger going to go? Because I think, the idea of the phantom Maidan 3, there's going to be a third Maidan. Okay, Maidan 1 and Maidan 2 haven't brought the results. Why would Maidan 3 bring the results? I don't know if it's going to go in that direction. I think there might be,
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying that in any European country, be it Italy, Spain, France, Germany, whatever, when there are protests, you show them as they are. You don't try to tell, oh, well, those guys were against European Union. Well, they're lumpens. They're, undermentioned.
Hand of Putin.
Yeah, hand of Putin. Nobody says that, right?
Well, perhaps not widespread. It does happen, though. I mean, we had a lot of coverage of the anti-Trump protests in America where were accused of being stage-managed by various classic, favorite sort of boogeymen of the far right, of the right wing.
But I think here it's very clear that the press is exactly as Savik said. It's being filtered through. It's going through either the government or oligarchs that are preventing the populations from seeing what's really going on, and that's quite worrisome.
Oh, yeah. No, without question.
But the difference is that in such a situation, in any, let's say, democratic country, the government tries to find the problem and tries to find the solution. tries to negotiate, tries to make the strategies or whatever, sometimes, or just mostly. In this country, they try to behave in an absolutely different way. They try to create an illusion that nothing had happened. And that's the big difference. And as Safik mentioned, the main problem is the quality of the government who became the government after the Revolution of Dignity. Because they came to power when the people want them to make reforms, to make the road to the, let's say, based on the European values, but nothing had changed. Compared to the Yanukovych's regime, nothing had changed. So the same way of governing, absolutely the same way of trying to hide everything in the country, the same way trying to show that nothing is going on, everything is okay, and that's it. And yes, we are not talking about the third Maidan, but I will tell you one thing. 1 week before the end of Maidan, no one believed that it will be finished. That way, that it was finished.
So from my side, I'm not completely agree again. So we are going in the right directions, but speed is too slow, and so we need real change and quickly, because it's especially in our century where you just quick or die.
So, when you go in the right direction to a train station, it's important not to miss a train.
Yep, that's true.
Thank you very much. See you next week.